Okay guys, what's up? We are here doing another ride-along video. Today I have the pleasure of taking out the 68 GTO. What a great looking car. I love the way this car looks. The red line tires, we did these U.S. Mags wheels that look kind of like original Pontiac wheels, but they're bigger to clear the disc brakes. We're just gonna take you for a nice cruise in this car. This is a 400 cubic inch original drivetrain, TH400 transmission. It's got a posi rear end. So this thing is a cruiser, but it's also got plenty of get up and go. We're just gonna take you out, probably get on the freeway, drive around a little bit, and just talk about the driving experience in this car. So let's take you along with me. All right, so buckling up. First thing when you get in this car, you notice it has like really cool GM marked seat belts. These are the original lap belts. But this car also has the optional like third point shoulder belt. They kind of tuck up into these clips and they both go into the latch if you want. I'm just gonna put the lap belts on for now. I know that's a safety thing, so it's nice to have that option, and this car has it. So we're gonna use this. So right off the bat, when you put it in gear, you notice this has the his and hers shifter, which is a really neat feature. It has options for locking out part of the shifter so that you can't really bang gears. You just put it in drive basically. But you can open this up, start out in 1 and then shift up manually to 2 and 3. So we'll play with that a little bit. But this thing is idling. I got it already warmed up. It's sitting about 200 degrees right now. It's a hot day. It's got a dual electric fan setup and an aluminum radiator. So actually, you know what? This is probably like 195, which is pretty ideal for this engine to run at that. You know, you start getting concerned when you get like 210, 220. You get a little concerned, but I have never seen that temperature in this car. So it seems to stay nice and cool. So you know what? Let's put it into 1. So you slide this over and you go all the way down into 1, and then the transmission stays in 1. Basically what this does is it just holds the gear until you tell it to upshift. So right now it's in 1 and it'll just hold 1. And then there you go, you bang it into 2, second gear, and then third gear. It's kind of fun, kind of a fun feature. And then that's neutral, and you can use it on the fly and just go back into third there. And this is just regular drive. I'll probably leave it in this for most of the drive. There's no need unless you're like, you know, getting after it. Like if you're gonna do a little drag race with somebody. The last time we took this to Verona to the 8th mile track, I did that. I put it in 1 and manually shifted it, and it was kind of nice because you could hold that gear out a little longer and then decide when you wanted to shift it. And it seemed to work. It seemed to give it like kind of a performance advantage versus just letting it shift on its own. So you have options there. You can play with it a little bit. This car is super comfortable. One thing I will say about this car is that the way that everything was laid out from the factory is retained. So your seating position with the buckets, driving position, the stock steering wheel. Basically what happens a lot of times when you get a custom car and you change all of that, some of the ergonomics can get disrupted basically, I would say. So you can get into a situation where you have like a real supportive seat, but it puts you in a weird position, and then you change the steering wheel and that gets in a different position. This car not having the tilt column, and retaining all the factory stuff, it's still in a super comfortable driving position. Something I really liked about it. And they got it right from the factory. You feel like you're just in something classy in this car. Which Pontiac, you know, as far as the GMA bodies, this was a higher trim level than a Chevelle. So you did get some luxuries. You got the wood grain, you got a little bit different design on the dash and everything. So that's something that was retained in this car, and it's something that I really like, having all the factory stuff laid out. All right, so we're cruising on the freeway. We're going basically 70 miles an hour right now. This car was not originally equipped with a tachometer, so we don't know what RPM we're at, but it's not screaming. It's not like some other cars I've been in. I believe this has a 323 rear gear, which is pretty freeway friendly. So you can drive it like this and feel comfortable. A big thing that we changed about this car was the suspension and the brakes, and it really changed this car, and the steering as well. So we went with SpeedTech. We partnered up with them. They sent us a full package for this car, and that includes like all their upper and lower control arms, Viking coilovers, the geometry is corrected. This car feels really planted. It doesn't ride rough. We have terrible roads where we're at here, and this car rides super smooth on them, but it also feels planted. Like right now, you know, I'm going about 75 on this on-ramp, and there's like almost no body roll. It feels like you could push this car way harder into a turn. You know, I don't want to like break the law too crazy in this car, but just to describe what I'm feeling, you know, like on an on-ramp, on an off-ramp, you don't have to like baby it and feel like you're white knuckling it like you would in this car from the factory. This car had like 14-inch tires, bias ply tires. It had a real loose ratio steering box from the factory. Now this is a 12.7 to 1 Borgeson box, which tightens up the ratio, and it feels nice and responsive. It feels crisp. There's not a ton of play. So like as soon as you do something with the steering wheel, the car does something. Originally that wasn't the case. You have a lot of this going on an original steering car while you're driving. If you ever watched an old movie, some of it's fake, but some of it's real. When they're driving, they're just constantly correcting the car. You can see on this car, as soon as I do just a little bit of input, it goes that way. So that's what you're used to in a modern car, and that's what you get with the Borgeson box. It's a quick ratio box, and it gets you that modern feel. Even though you have this like thinner, like wood grain grip steering wheel, it's not a huge steering wheel. It's probably a mid-sized steering wheel. You know, when you get into like real performance cars, you get a smaller steering wheel, and it's just a different amount of leverage you get. But this one's just the right size. I like the way it feels in your hand. You feel like you're driving a classic car, which is something I really love. I love that when you get in a classic car, it looks classic, and it's just like a throwback in time that you're in something classic. And that's what we kind of always want to go for with being a RestoMod. Don't want to go too over the top with the interior, changing a lot of stuff. And this car, it's nice to know that they got it right. You know, this car was designed for a person to just get in and go. All the distances, the ergonomics, where the shifter lays, your armrest, it all just feels right in this car. So we didn't mess with that too much. So you can see this car has good oil pressure. The engine was freshly rebuilt, so we're just cruising and it's about 60 psi of oil pressure. We have like a 3-gauge panel set up down below the dash in this car, and that's basically what you get is water temp, oil pressure, and amps. So the water temp and the oil pressure are the two main things that you watch when you're driving any old car, really. That's what you're looking at quite a bit. This car didn't have a gauge for either one of those. It just had a light that turns on like basically when it's too late, you're already in trouble. So this way you can monitor them more accurately. So it's a nice additional feature. And the Stewart Warner is a very classic vintage brand. So this is stuff that was available in '68. So although it's an upgrade, it's still period correct. You're not getting like a modern gauge panel with some real racy, you know, looking gauges in there. So that's good. So you may not be able to tell in the camera, but I'm heading east, out east of San Diego, and there's like a pretty substantial hill climb. So we've been going up a grade now for the last like 3 or 4 miles at this point. We're not at like huge elevation, but we just climbed 1,000 feet really quick. So that's something that shows you this car is able to cruise. We did that at freeway speeds. It's hot out today, and we're just cruising. We just did an elevation climb about 1,000 feet, and you can see we're going back down now. We do have an exhaust on this car. This has 2 Black Widow mufflers and full 3-inch stainless exhaust going all the way out the back. So it has a nice tone when you're at RPM, but you know, when it's idling, it's deep and throaty. So I liked, you know, the sound that we got out of it. It's a little more aggressive, but it's not annoyingly loud. There's not a lot of drone. I mean, we're just cruising at speed, and there's no drone in this exhaust, which is really nice. And I have the window down right now. We're just cruising with the window down. There's something about the way they designed cars back then that you didn't get like all the wind buffeting that you get now with the window down. People were driving cars with the window down quite a bit more. This has this little like vent window, which is really cool. And this one operates with a crank. So you're able to deflect a bunch of air into the cab that way. A lot of them, you know, on the lower trim level cars, they just have a knob here and you open it and kind of set it where you want. You get into the higher GM trim level cars and they have an actual crank for it. That's something you see on like Cadillacs and Buicks and Pontiacs. Very easy to drive this car. I feel totally comfortable just one-handed driving it. It's not all over the road. It kind of goes where you point it and it stays straight. It's not wandering, it's not darty. There's almost no bump steer in this car, which was a big thing that was an upgrade with the SpeedTech stuff. There's like a lot of bump steer correction geometry built into their parts. So that makes this car a lot nicer to drive, even at speed. It's just a lot more freeway friendly. And even on a big freeway dip like that at speed, we have this car pretty low where the stance looks nice, but nothing's slamming. You know, you go over a big dip on the freeway, you're not bottoming out everywhere, your tires aren't rubbing. You get really aggressive with stance and wheels and tires, and then you got to kind of live with that. You know, kind of the byproduct of that is that you end up with, you know, clearance issues, rubbing, stuff dragging down on the ground. We try to tuck everything up into the frame as much as you can, as much as possible. And that was a nice thing about this car, is that it's not super extreme. So it retains a lot of stuff that was engineered into these cars to make them daily drivable. I mean, in 1968, this would be your only car. So you better be able to get on the freeway, deal with the bumps and dips, sit in traffic, get into the city traffic. And this car still does all of that. It does it a lot better now. The suspension is like 10 times better. It's not floaty and it's not, you know, lumbering around. When we first got this car, he kind of had to slow down for turns because it would just body roll so much. It had these dinky little sway bars on it. And that's all way better now. The steering feels better. And the brakes, we put some big 13-inch rotor, 6-piston front caliper brakes on this car. This in the rear too, and they're power brakes, so you barely breathe on them, and this thing stops. The pedal feel is great. It's linear. Even though it's a power brake car, this car doesn't have a huge cam, so it makes enough vacuum to keep that power brake booster full all the time. So you can see this ramp here. This ramp says 45 miles an hour. I'm comfortably going 60 without any drama, like one-handed. And the car feels very safe, very planted. I always like the visibility on a GM body car. I'm a big proponent of, even though you have mirrors, I like to do a head-shoulder check. And this car doesn't have big blind spots. And it's not like limo tinted. You can really see what's going on in this car. Yeah, we're just cruising. This is like normal freeway driving here. And this thing doesn't feel labored. I'm like barely in the gas, just maintaining speed. So don't always knock a 3-speed transmission. I would never knock a turbo 400 either. These things are indestructible, they're bulletproof. A lot of guys, when they're making big power, this is their go-to. If you're towing, this is kind of your go-to transmission. You really don't have to worry about a turbo 400. There's some modern overdrive transmissions that you got to do a lot to them to get them to be strong enough to put behind a torquey 400 cubic inch engine. Not the case with a TH400 transmission. So that's why I like this transmission. and why we opted not to swap it out. It's also like, this is what the car came with, its numbers matching. Why mess with a good thing, you know? Especially like, the big deal with overdrive transmissions is exactly what we're doing right now. You want to be able to freeway drive long distances, and this car still does it. So it's not like we're really missing out on anything by not having that extra fourth gear. It's just a matter of ratios. You know, all these 3-speed transmissions, the final gear ratio is always 1-to-1. So you can basically start playing with rear end ratio at that point. A lot of GM cars back in the day didn't have an aggressive like 410 rear gear ratio. They had something that was freeway friendly, something in the low 3 range, you know, 323s, 3.0s. I've even seen some of these Chevelles. I had a 69 Chevelle that had a 273, and I would never think about putting an overdrive transmission in a car that had a 273. So that car was kind of a dog off the line, you know, it left something to be desired. But you go 80 miles an hour in that car with a 1-to-1 transmission and feel okay about it. So that was just giving it a little gas, and we got up to like a little over 80 right there real quick. I don't know what else you want out of a car. It makes you feel like you're going fast too, because it does transfer weight good. We have the shocks set up on like a nice soft comfort setting. It's just a couple clicks away from dialing this in. We're going to be taking this track out, or this car out to the track to Chuckwalla. So we're going to dial in the shocks like real aggressive for that. I have a strong feeling that when we get out there, we're going to be outperforming the tires. So like, I really wanted these Redline tires. But what happens is the company that makes these, you pick kind of a normal tire and they vulcanize a red line onto it. And so the tire that we have on this is just like a Uniroyal tire. It's kind of an all-season, nothing super aggressive. So I think that's what's gonna happen is like we got all this good suspension and probably not sticky enough tires to like fully track this thing. But that's okay. I'm not that worried about it. There's gonna be like some pretty hardcore track cars out there. And this wasn't built to keep up with that. I mean, we would put probably a little bit more tire and a stickier compound if that's what we wanted to use this car for all the time. Right now, kind of the intended use of this car is going to be basically just, yeah, you see, people are not good at merging sometimes here, but that's okay. The intended use for this car was a lot of driving, like enjoy this thing, it's comfortable, it cruises, so we have it set up for that right now. But it's just a couple clicks away, a couple shock setting adjustments, and we're going to be out there at Chuckwalla. Probably the suspension's going to out-handle the tires is my prediction. We'll see when we get out there, but it should be fun. It's fun to be able, you know, we rented the track for the day, so it's going to be fun to be able to kind of use the car out there. The car is so smooth on the freeway. It's hard to believe that, like, well, I mean, so we replaced all the body bushings, and this is a body on frame construction. And those cars like that are a lot more compliant. So this is a 20-mile-an-hour turn. I think I'm going like 40 through here. No complaints from the car. You can just throw it in here. I'm like bracing myself in the seat because the car is so planted that this original seat really is just kind of leaves something to be desired. Now you understand why when you get real good suspension and then you get good tires on a car, like you want a good seat to hold you in, because once the car stays planted, your body's just sliding. I forgot what I was saying. I just threw the car into that turn, and that was super fun. But yeah, okay, so I was talking about how smooth this car feels. The body on frame construction cars, to me, they have a layer of insulation between all your suspension components and the body, and we replaced all those bushings. We put all new bushings in there between the body, so that like firms things up, but it also gives you like another layer of insulation. So, you know, the road bumps and all that stuff, you're insulated a little bit from it. The Chevelle we basically eliminated all that. We tied the body to the frame, and we really let the suspension work on that car. So that car felt really good in a different way. It just felt really solid. This car has a little more luxury to it. And I have noticed that, you know, a lot of times when I'm working on a car, whether it's a new car or an older car, I really like to look at the way they put things together, because these companies spend a ton of money engineering stuff, and they have an entire engineering department that they spend millions of dollars trying to get rid of road noise. That's a huge thing. And what I notice on like fancy cars like BMWs and stuff like that, they're unibody cars, but what they end up having is like a subframe for the suspension that bolts to the body, and there's always a ton of rubber insulation between those subframes and the body, and that's what makes those luxury cars feel really quiet and smooth. So like if you pay attention to stuff like that, when you're building a car, like a classic car, you kind of keep that stuff in mind. So, you know, depending on your goal with the car, like with this car, it wasn't all out like track performance. We weren't trying to build, you know, a super track monster car. We wanted it to ride nice and drive smooth. And so replacing all the original bushings with brand new bushings between the body and the frame, it helped a lot. All the new suspension has urethane bushings, which are a little stiffer, which helps with deflection, and that's why you get the performance handling that you get. But they are harder than rubber bushings, so they don't insulate noise and vibration as much. They do still have quite a bit of give. So when we went through this, that's what we kind of wanted to give the car every opportunity it had to feel like still kind of luxurious. The GTO was a performance car, but it was a higher trim level package. So a lot of people that are driving this car, they still wanted it to feel nice and quiet and drive good. And we wanted to keep that. We wanted to retain that. So a lot of the focus we had when we were doing upgrades to this car, we didn't do a ton to this car, but we did the right things. We focused our attention on things that were going to make a difference and make the car better. So that wraps up the driving portion. I'm back here at the office. What a pleasure to drive. Like I said in the last video, I can't believe this is part of my job. I mean, this is what people want to do on their weekends, on their free time. I just got to do it for you guys, just cruise around, give you a taste of the driving experience in a car like this. This is not a modern car, but the driving experience in this car is everything you want. You feel like you're in a classic car without all the hassle of all the stuff that technology has improved in the last 50 some odd years. We got some good suspension parts. Thanks to SpeedTech, they made this drive a lot better than it should be. The on-ramps and off-ramps is where that stuff shines, and then even on the bumpy road. So thanks for coming along with us. Hope you guys enjoyed the cruise. Get in to win this car. We have a few weeks or months left. And if you're watching this video later on, we're probably giving away another car. We do one every 3 months. So get entered to win. If you subscribe to our YouTube, you're entered to win a Ram Charger that we're finishing up just by subscribing. So get in there, and thanks for watching. Keep having fun with cars.